Welcome to the Gray Report. I'm your host, Spencer Gray, and I don't know what we just did here at Gray Capital. We're just getting ready to close on our latest multifamily acquisition. It's located in Indianapolis, Indiana. It's a 292 unit A-class multifamily property. It's called Flats at Stones Crossing. And if you've been following Gray Capital, listening or watching the podcast, we've talked about it quite a few times. And today, while we're recording, it's October 7th, it's a Tuesday, we're closing on the property. Literally during this episode, I'm going to be monitoring in real time. Email communications coming in. Jay Reeder, our chief investment officer, who really runs transactions here at Gray Capital, he's going to try to step away, if at all possible. He's going to sit down in the seat with me, co-host, and I want to talk to him about just what the process is to, buy one of these large multifamily properties. Not necessarily on the capital raising side, which I'm sure we'll get into that maybe a little bit, but more of just just what it takes. What are all of the details? What are all the moving pieces? Because, while this was relatively straightforward in some ways, this transaction was pretty complicated in others. And there's so many intersections of the status of the multifamily market, lending, financing, insurance, these relationships that have been moving. So it's going to be a really, I think, unique episode. But we're not going to skip out on the research reports and data because that's what we do here at the Gray Report. So strap in. We're going to have a great episode. We've got pieces. Yardi Matrix released their September report, as well as the Mortgage Bankers Association released their commercial multifamily quarterly data book report for 2025, a huge database of information. Mostly going to be talking about the Yardi report, talking about this deal. Rents are slowing down. So you're going to want to stick around for the full episode of the Gray Report. Make sure you've liked this video, subscribe to the Gray Capital YouTube channel so you can get all of the updates. All right, let's get into it. Welcome back to the Gray Report. Again, let's get right into this latest multifamily report from Yardi Matrix. It's the Yardi Matrix September Report. Yardi puts these out every single month. We cover them not only on the Gray Report podcast, but also our newsletter, which we put out every week, every Thursday. Sign up at graycapitalllc.com. We do it as a free service to try to get the best and most latest up-to-date research reports in your hands, covering multifamily, commercial real estate, the macro economy. So reading some of these headlines are a continuation of some of the things we've been talking about in the past few weeks. And I quote, "With demand and economic growth starting to show signs of cooling, multifamily rents hit a snag in September. The average U.S. advertised rent fell $6 to $1,750, while year-over-year rent growth fell 30 basis points to 0.6%. But I think, end quote, hitting the nail on the head, continuing, the $6 drop in advertised rents was the worst September showing in more than a decade. Properties and markets with an overhang of new supply are offering concessions and or cutting advertised rents to attract tenants. But also, it's not smooth sailing for build to rent. We may have thought the build to rent segment, which is attracting maybe slightly middle-aged and older millennials looking for more of that single family home environment, very popular asset class. It's not smooth sailing in the BTR world as well. Single family build to rent advertised rates also took a hit in September. The average BTR advertised rent dropped by $15 in September to $2,194, while year-over-year rent growth, the year-over-year growth rate fell 60 basis points to 0.0%. So this, again, follows the theme that we've been covering the last several episodes of this podcast and newsletter, which is a slowing market. Now, we're getting into the slower leasing season. Everyone is at school. A lot of those big household decisions have been made. But we know the amount of uncertainty in the economy that's permeated down to the housing market is not encouraging too many people to make decisions whether to move. And in general, that's preventing a lot of velocity of any type of transaction, whether it's a rental or a single family home for purchase, or even just business investments, whether it's a business owner hiring or making some of those larger capital investments. The question that many ask is that creating a lot of pent-up demand? I think the answer is possibly, but there's not exactly a ton of evidence to say, when that demand might be unleashed. The government shutdown that we're in currently, I don't think is helping the situation, adding on to uncertainty driven by tariffs, inflationary pressures, geopolitics, and just general uncertainty. So again, just looking at this chart going back from September 2023, looking at national rents, I mean, there has been not a lot of movement, relatively stagnant. I mean, some growth since September 2023, but not a whole lot. Let's take a look at some of the year-over-year rent growth. Coastal and Midwest markets are continuing to lead. In fact, when I was taking a look, I think about of the 12 major markets that have posted positive rent growth, I want to say about 6 to 7 of those are in the Midwest. The remainder are in Northeast. And then we have San Francisco out on the West Coast. So New York City is kind of taking the top spot for rent growth, followed by Chicago, the Twin Cities, San Francisco, Philadelphia, Kansas City, Columbus, Detroit, New Jersey, Boston, Indianapolis, Baltimore, before you get to the national average of 0.6% rent growth. And that's across all asset classes. So that's taking your lifestyle, which is more of your A-class properties, as well as your what Yardi calls renters by necessity asset classes, which can be a combination of B and C, maybe a little bit of A minus. We all know that there's a lot more folks in that renters by necessity class than lifestyle, because renting just isn't as much of a choice as it was maybe a couple of years ago prior to interest rates being as high as they are. When we break down the renters, the lifestyle asset class versus renters by necessity, we see a little bit of change in kind of the rent growth leaders. New York City is taking this top spot on either category. A lot of that is driven by when folks are coming back to New York City. They're looking for employment. There's a lot of return to office. A lot of people who, maybe moved out into the country. Maybe they moved out into the Catskills during COVID. Well, they're coming back. And I think there's also this pressure of, new college graduates. People are always going to be wanting to move into New York City. But also, I think the theme between Chicago, New York, and San Francisco is these are all markets that really haven't seen nearly enough supply over the last several years. It's hard to develop in these large cities. And so if you're not getting new inventory, you're going to start seeing rent growth. Which I find, interesting, because New York City, San Francisco, and Chicago are typically large components of rent control and have, political messages of trying to keep rents low, although their policies are translating to some of the highest rent growth in the country right now. When we look at year-over-year rent growth by renters by necessity, it's a little bit of a change, not in a big way. New York City still takes the top spot. Kansas City is seeing some of the highest rent growth in the renters by necessity category, followed by Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, then Chicago, Detroit, Columbus, and Philadelphia. Now, this is all year-over-year numbers. When we look at some of these short-term changes, we see a similar trend. Short-term U.S. advertised rents fell 0.3% month over month in September, with only 6 of the Matrix's top 30 markets posting gains. That means in the short term, really zooming in September, the market is mostly negative, really, with New York and San Francisco posting like the only really kind of above trend gains, followed by Philadelphia, Kansas City, Portland, Twin Cities, San Diego, Houston, Orlando, Baltimore, New Jersey, Seattle, and Los Angeles. A lot of other markets are seeing some declines, including some Midwestern markets. Yardi points out, maybe because we're speaking up about the Midwest so much here on the Gray Report, they have to knock us down at some point. Several Midwestern markets are seeing some declines, including Detroit, Chicago, and Columbus, just on a month-over-month basis. But as we mentioned, Chicago on a year-to-year basis is doing quite well. Even Indianapolis, one of our favorite markets, is suffering right now on a month-over-month basis from the lifestyle asset class category. Interesting piece that they covered on the Yardi report, which is really kind of piggybacking off of Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies report, looking at some of the longer-term demand trends for the multifamily market. And they point out something that is worth noting, not overly to be concerned about, but it's certainly worth mentioning. And that is household growth, which is a key driver of multifamily demand, is, quote, is expecting to moderate in the coming decade. New households are likely to total about 840,000 per year, down from about 1.5 million annually over the last 10 years. They go on to say the ongoing drops in birth rates and foreign immigration are the main reasons household growth is slowing. And weak household growth may impact multifamily demand less than feared, though, because a greater share of new households are projected to rent rather than buy homes. So what we're saying is we're having less kids, our birth rate is going down, and our immigration has slowed down significantly. That is going to put a damper on new household formation. But maybe not silver lining, but the other side of the coin is because of household affordability or unaffordability, we have more and more individuals that are renters than previously forecasted. It would be nice to see that exact number of the growth in renter households to really be able to see what that how much that offsets that difference of almost 700,000 households, which would be basically what we'd be missing. The question that I have is, how temporary in nature is some of this data? How long? I think the birth rates is certainly a much longer term trend that's been going on in not just the United States, but developed countries across the world for decades. Immigration, on the other hand, that's a factor that's really shifted based on politics. We've had higher levels of immigration and then lower levels of immigration. And it truly has changed based upon who's in office. And again, not to get overly political, but to have sustained GDP growth and positive growth in this country, we do need to get our replacement rate up. And whether that's through having more kids or allowing more people to come to this country, if you just look at the math from the economy from just a pure number standpoint, we need more participants. And so whether it's housing, whether it's other parts of the economy, it's something that policymakers and voters should really think about, of having some of a balanced approach to be able to have sustainable populations. The United States has a great thing going in that we are a developed country, but we can sustain some slightly higher rates of growth. We don't want to slip back and be regressive and not being able to continue to have a moderate amount of growth that allows us to make longer term investments, to be able to count on those investments, be able to grow our cities, grow our states, and to have a tax base to pay for all of it. So again, not to get too political, but we need a couple more people coming to this country, or we need to have more kids. Now, I know there's a trend going on in the United States and probably the world to get that birth rate up. You hear Elon Musk trying to see how many kids they can have. To me, I don't know how much of it is that just a social media trend or if that's actually showing up in the numbers. I would bet that it's more of a social media trend, but we'll see. Maybe in a decade or so, that birth rate goes from, whatever it is, 1.4 today. Can we get it up to 1.5, 1.6? Can we get it all the way up to 2 plus? Again, wherever it comes from, we're going to need some people to live in our cities, to do all the productive work we want to do in this country, and then there'll be people that live in the apartments that we buy also. So I believe it's a win-win. Going on in the Yardi report, they always cover some single-family rent growth as well. So it's not just multifamily, but single-family and build-to-rent segment falls to a decade's low. Continuing on with the Yardi report, nationally, advertised rates for single-family built-to-rent units fell $15 to $2,194 in September, unchanged year over year, basically no growth. U.S. single-family rental occupancy rates were strong at 95.1% in August and unchanged year over year. Occupancy was 96.3% at RBN and 94.9%, that's renters by necessity, and 94.9% at lifestyle properties. Goes on to say that single-family rentals hit a rough patch in September as the $15 decline marked the worst month since February 2015. Looking at some of the markets that are still doing all right, Twin Cities, Kansas City, Chicago, Columbus, San Antonio, Grand Rapids, Greenville, Charlotte. And then some of the year-over-year occupancy changes. Jacksonville saw an increase of occupancy. Miami, Charleston, San Antonio. I think this is all due to supply. We're talking about whether it's multifamily, single-family rentals, and rent growth. A slowdown in rents and a slight increase in vacancy, dip in occupancy is attributed to supply coming online. But that supply is slowing down. We've got some graphs in the MBA report that we can get into a little bit. But first, I want to finish up this Yardi report and talk about some of the employment and supply trends and some forecasted rent growth. But really, the most important thing on here is the T12 completions as a percent of the total stock. And what that means is how many new apartments did we actually complete relative to how many apartments exist. A lot of apartments were built in New York City. It's taking the top spot on rent growth, but also one of the top spots for completions of delivering new supply as it needs all of a sudden. 3% was completed as relative to total stock. Again, that's a relatively low number. We saw numbers as high as 12% in some Sunbelt markets about a year ago, and we still see some relatively high numbers in some Sunbelt markets. Austin is still at 8.6% completions as a percentage of total stock. Phoenix at 5.4%. Both of those markets have been posting negative rent growth, as well as Denver here. 6.4% completions as a percent of total stock. Again, not surprising. Year-over-year rent growth in those markets are all -3 to -4%. I mean, you can see the relation. Now, this is lagging. Obviously, rent growth year-over-year is rent growth, from today versus last year, as opposed to we're delivering today. That is, deliveries today add slack for a prolonged period of time, which that's really what we are dealing with right now. A key factor is that more than 525,000 units are in the lease-up phase nationally, which intensifies competition among properties. Markets with the weakest rent growth are often overlap with these carrying the largest pipelines. We talked about Dallas, Phoenix, Charlotte. This is a factor that we're going to be living with for a period of time. And a lot of syndicators, a lot of owners, a lot of investors, we are excited to move on to an area, a more normal environment. And so when we see permits starting to decline, you start to hear this narrative of things are falling off the cliff. Starts are falling off the cliff. Permits are falling off the cliff. Supply is falling off a cliff, which implies that the cliff is right in front of us. And it's not like a year out or 2 years out. Because when we do look at these numbers, like they are declining. They definitely are declining in terms of, again, like the year-over-year permits, year-over-year starts. I'll have to go through the MBA piece to find the exact page. Basically, like multifamily, I think permits, we're down basically 20% year-over-year, and then compounding on 20% again. So like we are definitely coming down. But it's a slow cascade. It's not like it's going to fall off a cliff. It's going to be rolling. And as it rolls, all of these leases don't just get signed at full market rents right away at pro forma. It takes a period of time for them to be absorbed into market. And through that period of absorption, those owners make decisions to potentially lower those rents to accelerate their timeline to get to permanent financing or sell the property, or basically de-risking their development investment. And that puts downward pressure on the rest of the market because the incentives are different. I might have the incentive as a property manager or an owner of an existing stabilized asset to cash flow the property, to achieve slightly higher rents, try to get my expenses down, to increase my net operating income over time for cash flow, kind of your standard strategy. But if you're a developer, you may not care about cash flow at all. In fact, you may have told your investors they're never going to get cash flow. You just told them that you're going to return their capital and a multiple on that capital within a period of time, usually about 2 to 4 years, plus or minus. And as we're getting into that second, third, and fourth year of some of these development deals, the cost to hold on to these properties is increasing because they're on these construction loans that are very variable rate, floating rate. And so their return goes up the quicker they can sell it, especially since IRR, the return metric that most investors use, is time-based. So the shorter the hold period, the higher rate of return. If you have a sophisticated like profit split structure that's IRR based, the sponsor or the GP will make more money the faster they sell it. So they don't care necessarily as much about getting the highest rent or even the lowest expenses. They need to have a couple months of a financial statement, a track record that a buyer can take to a lender and get financing on, there's a big gap there right now. But other than that, they could care less about what they spend or really what the rents are, as long as that next buyer can justify that purchase price. And that is where the gap is, because what many of these developers have had to do is lower rents or put concessions on to get their property leased up, to get it up to 90% occupied, which you can then take to a permanent lender like Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac to get financing on. But when then that buyer, somebody like us, takes that financial statement to Freddie Mac or a Fannie Mae, they'll take a look at it and they'll say, well, these rents aren't nearly as high as they should be to justify the loan. And you could turn back to them and say, well, they were in lease up. They gave big concessions because 3 other properties in the market were in lease up, and now they're all occupied and they're getting rid of their concessions. But Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, especially Freddie Mac, they're looking at that financial history. They're looking at the last typically 12 months of history and saying, no, well, you can say that you have a business plan to increase these rents, but the current owner sign leases at this amount, that's exactly what we're going to give you credit for. And that is what is adding to this bid-ask spread between what sellers would like to sell their properties for and buyers. And so we're going to be in a period of working through this slack, getting back to new deliveries, supply, and a slowdown of rent growth. We're not out of the woods yet, but we certainly are at a point, we're near that low point in terms of rent growth. We're not seeing an acceleration of supply, but it's not going to be the quick bounce back that everyone is hoping for. Now, maybe we'll get a recovery from this uncertainty. I'm not confident in that because I think it's part of the strategy of the current Trump administration is to have enough chaos to create room to operate. I think they would even prefer to have a little bit more certainty just because the economy needs it. If you talk to investment professionals, unbiased, apolitical investment folks, they'll say that really a lot of the actual quantifiable uncertainty is behind us. Tax reform has been passed. So that's on the books. Don't have to wonder about that. We don't have to wonder whether those tax breaks are going to go away. Tariffs, while there's still some volatility here or there, tariffs are mostly behind us. They're mostly kind of set in motion. And there's an idea that they're not going to get so much worse, especially in regards to China, because that really added the most global uncertainty. And then, obviously there's geopolitical issues, but things, or this government shutdown, but those I think will appear to be relatively transient in nature and will move past it. But the general population is not yet to a point of where they're feeling confident in the future. Business owners aren't feeling confident in the future enough to hire. They're not necessarily firing too many people because you want to keep operating. Things aren't horrible. But, to make that additional investment, at the same time, every business owner is saying, do I need to rehire that position? Or can we replace it with AI? Can someone else do that if they use an AI tool or a virtual assistant? I think we're starting to see some of these, not necessarily complete productivity gains, but we're going to start to see some movement, some quantifiable data to show how more productive we can be using these AI tools over the next 6 to 12 months. And, could a recession be caused because we're in an AI bubble? There's so much hype and cyclical investment going on. Certainly probable. But we start seeing some of these gains, long-term fundamentals are really exciting for the macro economy. If we really start seeing some of these productivity gains, so many individuals were so focused on like kind of fighting the last war, and we're really worried about inflation. And I mean, I'm worried about the debt, and I'm worried about inflation. I think we are forgetting how powerful of a deflationary effect technology has on society and the economy. And I just haven't seen anything that would be as deflationary as AI, because you're not just making technology more efficient, you're making people more efficient, and general cost of labor and payroll go down significantly. Now, how society deals with all that will yet to be seen. But I am optimistic that we will see some benefits. All right, welcome back to the Great Report. We had a little quick break because, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, is we're working on a live deal, trying to close Flats at Stones Crossing. It's multifamily property we've been working on for, I don't know, seems like forever. And we've known about it for over a year. Jay Reeder, Chief Investment Officer, Great Capital, is back in this seat. Jay's heart rate is probably high. I've started sweating recently because we're getting this deal closed. It's something that we do. It's part of our business. It's a regular thing. It's not a unique thing. But these deals are hard, and they've been fewer and far between. It's been like a year since we've closed on a deal. We would love to do more, but there's just not that many great deals to do. Jay, you're like right in like the middle of this acquisitions process. You're going to be continuing to check on your phone. So just where's your head at right now? You've been managing so many details, so many people, trying to herd so many cats. Like, is your head about getting ready to explode? What's your mental state right now?
I think the biggest thing that I notice whenever we get to these closing days is it feels like there's never enough time in a day. It feels like any other day that I'm working, like I can set aside time, I can get work done, I can kind of go through my process. When it's these closing days, it's like everyone needs something 5 minutes ago. And so you take 5 minutes, go get it. And I mean, I was in today, and I'm giving a little bit to the audience here. It's a little after 4 o'clock. And I mean, I was in here this morning starting at 8 o'clock working with everyone. And I look up and it's 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I just like, where did the day go? I've been emails, calls, getting documents. And so it's like, oh no, I've been working for 5 hours and I still have all of this XYZ that still needs to be done. Where am I going to find the time to do it? And I think that's, anytime we get to a closing, I think that's probably the biggest thing I feel. And then after it closes, it's just like, you finally set all that down.
Well, you realize all of a sudden what work hasn't been done that you thought may have had been done a day or a week prior, and it forces everyone to get on the same page because it has to be complete, ready to go, because it's getting recorded by title, and so there's no other extra
options.
time. So, but like it wasn't just today. Backing up. Walk us through like the last like 48 hours or so, getting ready to close, trying to work, getting to the point of where we have funds ready to go, title, lender, insurance.
I think that's
some of the challenges and the
challenges. Anyone that's worked in project management kind of understands that you're only as successful as the slowest person you're working with. And we have a bunch of great team members, not just here in the Great Capital, but a bunch of vendors that we use. But it's hard when everyone's always waiting on someone else.
Yeah.
And I mean, we had an incredible seller on this one. I mean, CRG was fantastic to work with on this project. Yeah. Would love to do deals with them again in the future. They were great anytime we needed anything. So we were.
That's huge. Having a buyer that is on the same page and trying to not like play games, and you can kind of understand that everyone's just trying to get to the same point to get this deal closed. We've agreed on the terms.
Yeah, and so that was a huge relief that they were willing to work with. I mean, we have our teams that we always work with. We have our accounting firms that we work with. We have our legal that we always work with. So everyone's working in the same direction. Our lender, but then all of a sudden someone throws a wrinkle in it, and it causes 4 or 5 people to need to stop everything and do work. I mean, you were just sitting in my office, and we had to send them some org chart that we sent them yesterday. And it's like, well, who had that most recent org chart? Because you were sitting next to me when I filled it out and emailed it yesterday. Yeah. And it's like, how did that not get to the person making the decision?
Yeah. So let's back up a little bit. And I want to talk about just the last, day or so, because a lot of interesting kind of stories to get the actual deal across the finish line. well, take us back to the beginning. Learn about the deal, tour the deal.
Yeah,
so just tell the story.
I mean, so
Flats of Stones Crossing.
This deal, we like Spencer said, we've known about this deal for about a year. Because last year, CRG, they had 2 deals that they were bringing out. They had Hayden Flats in Bloomington and this deal in Greenwood. And at the time, the deal wasn't quite to 90%, so they didn't want to bring it out for sale, but they had brought Hayden Flats in Bloomington. So we had toured Bloomington, and we were told, like, hey, when it's time to sell, like, we want you guys to look at this one too. So why don't you guys tour this? So we toured it probably October, November last year, and really liked the property. Great location, all the amenities you could ask for. So it's like, oh, it's really awesome. But because of the rate environment, it's like, well, if it's not 90% occupied, I can't put debt on it. Like I can't get you what you want. I can't do what you want. So as much as I want to buy it, I just can't.
Yeah. And I was just talking about that earlier in the episode today of these developers. They're trying to get it leased up. They're getting ready to go. But for us to buy it, we have to have, some trailing financial statements to go to a lender to put permanent financing on it. And so some of the objectives of getting it occupied don't always line up with getting it occupied at rents that can justify our purchase price.
Yeah. And I mean, we've seen that even on this deal, like as we kind of went through stuff with the loan, and the property financials were in a great spot, but when the lender underwrites, it's like, oh, it's in a lease up. Well, not sure we can underwrite stabilized yet. So
let's fast forward. We put the deal under contract, negotiate a purchase price, all of that.
So we fast forward. Yeah. So like I said, we saw that last year.
Let's get to the point where we're having to pick between Freddie and Fannie, or trying to figure out financing, because that's all. But that was the first challenge.
Yeah. So
in this deal that didn't go the way we had hoped.
Didn't. So this deal came out, and again, it got launched and actually marketed early in the spring, and so there was a nice long process of kind of doing the marketing, doing that. We weren't really competitive with our numbers, and then that's when SB1 got passed, and all of a sudden we had been following, and we could take advantage of put that on our underwriting.
Which SB1's new tax law in Indiana that basically is going to lower the property tax rate more or less at multifamily properties over the next 6 years or so for some properties, and it helps out this property.
Yeah, it helped out this property quite a lot, and so we got to the point where we were doing it. Well, one of the things that we were looking at when we were doing this is we were trying to kind of decide between 2 lenders, both of whom we have a relationship with and have done loans with in the past. And we were like, you know what? Hey, you guys both have kind of done some work on this deal. We'll kind of bid it out side by side, and one will take Fannie, one will take Freddie. And candidly, we've done a lot of stuff with Fannie lately. Like if you look at our last closings, like our last 5 closings, I think have all been on Fannie. I think the last Freddie we did was almost 3 years ago on Sycamore Terrace. And so we're going through this whole process, and we get to the point where we were negotiating the PSA and getting ready to sign the PSA. We are getting ready to do that, and both of our lenders were coming back to us to give us kind of our firm quotes on where they're going to be. And all of a sudden, one of them says, Fannie Mae won't underwrite you. Like they won't underwrite this deal. And it's like, well, haven't you always told us that the leverage is when we can compete these against each other and get better rates? And they're like, yeah, but like Fannie Mae will not.
Yeah, they're just outright refusing.
They're outright refusing to write this business for you.
In an environment where we're being told that the agencies are trying to get aggressive, they want to do business, they're well below their caps, they need to lend to maintain their caps, or how much they can lend each year. It's not making sense to us.
Yeah,
we've not told this story on the podcast before, by the way. So this is
I wasn't sure how much.
I think we should just tell the story because it's all we have nothing. There's nothing to it all happened. We have nothing to hide.
Yeah. So what happened?
Informative.
So what happened is we got put on a check, which for those that don't know, a check, it's the kind of credit check that the agencies use. That you're not allowed to know how to get on our secret list, but you can't know that you're on it until you try to go and get business from them. And
it's like the do not fly list.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And so we were on this, and all of a sudden it's like they will not quote you. And they're like, is there an issue with one of your loans? We're like, no, we're current on all of our loans. We've done everything we need to. We've provided all of our financials that are required. Like we've done all of these things. And they're like, well, they will not tell us anything. They will not give us any information. They are like, you guys could be in trouble. Like this is not a quick process. This is not anything we want to do that you want to be a part of. And we're like,
we're actively trying to. I mean, we've been awarded the deal at this point.
I think we're about to sign the contract.
I think we're getting ready to sign the contract, and we're going through the motions, our process of bidding for Freddie and Fannie Then all of a sudden we're being told we
Fannie
can't
won't
even
do-
go to Fannie won't even talk to us. We're on this naughty list, and we have no idea why or what it is, or really even that it existed.
Yeah. And so we are forced to go Freddie. And fortunately, like I said, we've worked with this lender quite a bit. We had some really good quotes, and everything was going well.
But we lost some of our negotiating.
We lost leverage. We definitely lost a year of IO that we probably could have gotten if we would have leveraged against Fannie. We were on time constraint for sure. Yeah. And so we just lost some of that leverage. And so the quote was go to Freddie. So we were like, okay, we'll continue to keep moving forward. Like the deal's still great. We'll still be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. It all still worked. I mean, the Fannie and Freddie quotes were not too dissimilar.
No, they were not too
just
dissimilar.
trying to get them to sharpen their pencil.
Yeah. And so we go through this process, go Freddie, get great feedback. Property continues to blow it out of the water over the summer. And long story short, we have to put down deposits as you do kind of with the lender, and kind of we're baked with Freddie. It's not like all of a sudden we can go back and change it, because side note, we got off of the list with Fannie Mae. It was a complete clerical issue.
Yeah. So finally, first off, the challenge to even get somebody on the phone to speak with us about it, of why we're on this list, what for, and like we've not done anything wrong. And it's like, if we let us know. And so long story short, not to go into all the details, we finally get in touch with somebody from Fannie Mae. They'll only speak to me. They ghost me on our first meeting. They finally show up to the second meeting. And they simply ask me, they go, do you syndicate capital? I'm like, a little bit. Like we've syndicated. We raise money from, high net worth individuals, all accredited investors, family offices. And they looked at me and they said, oh, that's probably it. I've learned that the agencies got a couple $100 million back in 2024 to combat fraud, because there was a lot of fraud in multifamily. There were some, mortgage brokers that were using the agencies that were committing straight up fraud. Remember, definitely it was going on. That's not what we do. We're just trying to buy multifamily deals. And because that we raised money from people, and that our name came up on the internet somehow because we have a podcast exercising our First Amendment right.
I'm going to step out for a second.
Sounds good. Jay's going to step out. He's going to step back in. He's stepping out because I think we just had some wires release. So this is going to be fun. And so eventually we got removed from this HX list, basically just by sending over a PDF of our firm overview. Literally, they said, can you just tell us about what your business does? Happy to do so. We're Gray Capital. We're based in Indianapolis. We're a multifamily owner-operator. We buy market-rate apartments. We raise money from investors. We manage them ourselves, and we own them for medium to long term. That's great. We're removed from the list. All clear. Stamp of approval. But unfortunately, we lost our opportunity to negotiate or put Fannie up against Freddie, and we missed out marginally on maybe some better terms. But we went forward. We're able to real time. We got our final wire has been received. All funds have been received. It's a very exciting time because there's so many moving pieces in the process. So while this is going on, Jay and I are back at the corporate office, keeping things moving. We've got a team that's on site right now, and I'm going to be giving them a call live on the podcast. What's going on site right now is we have our takeover team that consists of Katrina Greene, our Senior Vice President of Property Management. We've got a regional.
Sorry, I had to confirm wires.
all good. Please step out at any time. And so we've got Katrina's on site. We've got Tiffany, who's a regional property manager, is on site. I think Nikki Tagg's on site. And essentially those folks are onboarding the on-site team that almost all of the folks that work at the property are joining Gray Residential, becoming our employees. They've been very excited. We're excited to bring them onto the team. They've been coming in this limbo period of they've been working for the other property management company. There was a third-party manager that was managing the property. We had offered them. They'd accept the offers, but they're not our employees until
closing day.
Till closing. So they've been kind of been left out on an island. They're there's in this limbo period, and we're very excited. We're going to call them here in a minute. they're heading to the model, so it's quiet. So they're ready. They're very excited to hear from us.
Awesome. Yeah, we just got an email confirming the last wire hit, so I'm just looking for the email that said that funds are released.
All right. So I closed the loop on HX. We got off that list. Went forward. Not everything. I mean, due diligence was pretty smooth sailing. I mean, it's a new property. Again, we know the developer. They develop high quality stuff. No major concerns there. So I have to check all the boxes, go through, walk through everything, every unit, develop our business plan, which evolves around updating some of the amenities, adding some private yards, adding some Airbnbs. Managing a little bit better. We're going to add some patio, like grilling areas, which will be really nice. So not a ton of CapEx, but some CapEx, and then just buy it, manage it, really great market, take advantage of that organic growth. But then we learned something throughout the process that we always knew that existed. Well, it's this refi test or this exit test. And we were told at the beginning of the process that we need to get our app in really quickly in order to lock in a 35-year amortization on our term, which that's what we've got. So the loans amortize over 35 years, over 30 years, like on many residential mortgages, or 25 years on most commercial properties. So we want that 35 years, but that ended up complicating things a little bit down the road, because we're also going after a 5-year term, because the 5-year treasury was kind of at this sweet spot of it's like a long enough term, but it was lower than like the 7-year or the 10-year. A lot of times we'll go after 7 or 10-year debt, but this was like the 5-year was right in the belly of the curve. So the pricing was really, really good.
Very advantageous.
But tell us about this exit test and some of the challenges.
So the biggest challenge we had, like I said, it's the exit test. They call it the refi test, and
because we have plenty of sensitivity analysis that we thought that we passed just fine.
And this is something that we learned throughout this. We had underwritten everything to where we were at full leverage, 70% leverage. In place was fantastic, but this refi test took in some variables that we just couldn't get around. And all of a sudden we went from being at 46 to 46.2 on loan proceeds, and we get a call from a lender that we're down to 44.
Yeah, so they had told us that, all right, we're going to give you a loan of $46 million. And they were, hey, $46.2 million, even more money because the property's doing well. Then all of a sudden, no, it's going to be actually $44 million, $2 million less. And this was now it's 2 weeks before closing, but at the time this was like 7 days before we were supposed to close.
Yeah, so we did that, and it was Freddie Mac. And when we say like he who has the money makes the rules, it was 100% our lender fought for us. It went to the top of their credit. They're completely doing this equation wrong, and Freddie's like, that may be, but this is what we're going to do.
So what was their math? Why were they telling us that the loan, we couldn't support it was
the concessions. They were it was lease up concessions on the deal, and they said that the property couldn't support not having lease up concessions. And so they were running for 5 years of the term of this deal. They were running it with 3% concessions.
And that's a lot. That's more than normal.
That significantly more. Like we underwrote, and we had a forward-looking concession report that only had $60,000 a year in concessions moving forward, and they were wanting to underwrite $120,000 annually on those concessions. And so
they were more than double than that's in place. It's already been reduced, and they're saying in 3, 4, 5 years we'll be doubling the concessions that we have today, even in a higher supply environment.
And they're like, yeah, we're not going to move off it. And so through adjusting our buy down and kind of tightening things up, and I think we got them to come down a little bit. I think we got them to come down to like 90,000 or something like that on concessions, that they admitted that basically, it's probably not going to be that moving forward, but we're not going to give you full credit.
Yeah. And that we should be happy about it because they're going to drop our 35-year amortization, cut another $1 million off. And so we should just be thanking them for not taking more proceeds.
Yeah, because that's where it goes. Is our loan app was expiring, and we had to lock
break your legs too.
We had to lock our rate, otherwise.
Very thankful.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to move forward. And so, worked with our lender. Our lender got us kind of in some good positioning. They worked with our underwriting to get our buy down, and we got to the point where we were back well over $45 million on proceeds again. So, and when we took down the buy down, it really was a change of about $300,000 on what our net proceeds were with the buy down, how we were doing at full proceeds. So ended up not being a terrible solution that killed the deal, but definitely wasn't fun. And that kind of leads to where you're talking about what I've been doing the last 2 weeks, where we obviously have these gap equities that we have to do, which means we have to work with our equity people. We have to get them involved. We have to
all of a sudden a $2 million gap was made
Yeah.
because the lack of loan proceeds. And so we have to, have, basically a week to, raise an additional $2 million. But this is after we basically have already kind of closed fundraising.
Yeah, we've closed
We're
fundraising.
kind of done. We've told people, we don't need any more. We had a wait list, went through the wait list pretty quickly.
Yeah, we got our TIC investors that we were working with, and they came up. Both of them came up some, but then obviously when you're working with TICs, the percentages are off, and so we had to lock in percentages, but we didn't necessarily know what the total equity was because the loan was changing, and so we were doing that, and obviously we didn't want to make the deal so unpalatable to anyone that someone walked away, and we had to fill more equity, and so it just added a lot of complexities and moving pieces that as we got to closing, they just kind of compounded, and so that's kind of where we shook it out to. And I would say in the last few weeks, we are getting to the point where it just clean up everything. And a lot of it is our legal team and lenders legal. I mean, the amount of signatures I know you had to do, the amount of paperwork going back and forth because we were working with old drafts of documents, or the lenders council came back. We had 2 things that came back this morning that lenders council wanted us to change. And so then we have to recirculate docs.
You haven't even mentioned the estoppel getting signature, which, by the way, before we get into that, she said, I think are we closed, Jay?
I think so. I think Tanya.
I just saw.
I saw Tanya
from Troutman. Upon receipt of all funds, approvals, and authorizations to close, you are authorized to close and fund in accordance with our escrow letter.
Yeah. So
Congratulations, Jay.
Yeah. Thanks.
Not many people could, one, keep their head screwed on straight, but also the so much tracking that's involved, so many numbers, so many moving pieces, so many documents, so many people.
And I think the documents and numbers.
I know it's not easy. You make it look actually doable, and you've been able to do it successfully many times.
Well, thank you. And like I said, we have a great team at Ice Miller that kind of helps with facilitating some of these, because some of the legal docs, I will be the first to it. First that I will say I will never be able to do that. And it's the numbers and documents aren't what bothers me, because I work in numbers all the time. I think I've said that on here. Numbers don't bother me, but it's the waiting on people, and it's the I'm not in control. And I was talking with a seller earlier today, and it's like, we're all here. We just want to exchange money, and you take the property, we go develop another property.
Yeah.
But there are just so many other people that have stake in it. Like, not just our lender, but our lender's counsel. But then the lender's counsel is not just a representative of our lender, but they're Freddie Mac as a whole. Then you've got title, and we had issue with title company, and we have great partners with title, but because of
Freddie Mac has new rules that all of a sudden you have to use. Let's talk about that. I mean, so Freddie Mac has a new rule that you have to use like a national title,
national title escrow. Yeah, if you not, and so title insurance, we have great relationship. Monica and Tanya at Kensington Vanguard, we've used almost every deal we've been here. They've done great for us. We
know they're going to be on it. They're going to be organized. We know what to expect. We know they're going to be able to close successfully.
Exactly. It's never an issue with them. Well, then all of a sudden, new regulations, because
new made up rules.
Kensington Vanguard isn't on this list that Freddie approved. They're a national group, but they're not on this Freddie approved list. They had to have First American do the escrows. Well, now we're trying to handle coordination between our title company, a separate title company that's only doing the escrows, and then lender and all of the other people in between. And it's stuff that 3 months ago I didn't think about any of this. And I mean, we've learned some things on some of our newer acquisitions, especially since we started adding the ticks last year of some of the complications.
And a lot of 1031s.
And we thought we had kind of blocked and tackled to get
rid of experts now.
Get rid of
we
some
are
of those
experts.
Get rid of some of those options. And then all of a sudden this happens, and it's like I didn't even know that this could be an issue.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden and so I think that's where kind of the story of today is we had taken a lot of steps in previous deals that we've done as we scaled up, as we've done all these things. And we took care of the things that were issues in the past, but new stuff constantly kind of comes up, and we're continuing to learn as we go to the next deal.
Yeah. Every deal teaches lessons. I mean, everyone's unique. You try to get better, improve the process. But then, then it's also, focusing on things that we can control and not as much on the things you can't control. But then you're still trying to impose your will on everybody to try to get to closing. So like, there was a declaration of how some of the common area around the property was being used. The development was being used from, the original land developer, and a hospital network, has, owns some of the property. They have a building and they have some rights to the common. We basically just needed a sign off. We needed to get an estoppel, and it was supposed to be done a couple of weeks ago. And literally we're just like, well, yeah, it's all fine. But we're being told, we're like, yeah, we just need somebody from this health system to just sign off on this. It's no big deal. They just need to sign off on it. And then so last night, the day before we close,
we still don't have
still don't have this signature from this hospital that has nothing to do with the deal at all. But it's the one thing that could prevent the deal from closing. It's an absolute, requirement to close. We can't record the title without this being signed. And literally, it's like, well, it might be on somebody's desk somewhere. We don't know whose. We don't know which desk. And I'm texting Jay and our attorney. I'm like, we're sending somebody just to sit in these people's office. And like, it's not our responsibility. I'm like, we don't care whose responsibility it is, but like somebody's got to sign this document. And part of it is like not a fake veiled threat. It's like, no, we're sending somebody to just sit in their office because I'm not trying to just embarrass whoever's supposed to get this done. But this is a big deal. And it might be awkward that someone might show up physically, but like whatever it takes to get the deal done, signed.
Unfortunately, we didn't have to do that, but
no, we were on standby, but we told it, but everyone was ready to go. And we probably told them they can go home. I'm kidding. Let's check in with our on-site teams because Katrina's. I think that they're probably waiting for us.
I'm going to let you touch base with Katrina. I'm going to go check and make sure everything cleared out the way we wanted it to.
Okay. Can I tell them we're closed?
I think so.
Hey, Katrina, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
Doing well. How's Flats at Stens Crossing?
I mean, it's always so interesting because it's that hurry up and wait. And, we get here and kind of have to lay low a little bit. But the staff has been wonderful, very welcoming. Property's just gorgeous. So we've just had fun getting to know each other a little bit more.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, the waiting is can be a drag, but we are there. Funds have been released, so we're waiting on like the final series of emails that tells everyone officially that we are closed. But literally, we've got an email 2 minutes ago. Buyer and seller have separately approved closing. Everybody's copied, so we're there. Let me ask Katrina, did you think we were closing today?
I think because I've done so many of these that do end up closing, but it's like at the very end of the day, I did believe that we would.
You had faith.
Yeah. And this has been a pretty similar experience my entire career. So I did think that we would. I believed in us.
So what are the things that you guys are going to be doing? I guess, obviously, we have new team members that we're onboarding. What are some of the other things that you and the teams are focusing on right now to get transition started?
Everything right now is more just about making sure that if anything were to occur tonight, that we're just as ready here as any other property. So, making sure emergency services are set up, everybody's phones are set up. We've got the Flats team, that all stayed with us, making sure that the emergency calls roll to them, and then just having the resident communication on deck. All those very just technical, make sure we're here for the residents and the employees tonight thing. And then other than that, we've filmed some TikToks that we're very proud of.
Nice. Got to start the marketing material, having fun.
Yeah. We've got gifts ready to go for the site teams, although we haven't let them open them just yet. But Brian asked us. Brian's with me actually.
Hey, Brian.
He's like, what's in there? And so after we're done here, we'll walk back into the space and open welcome gifts, and and then depart for the evening. Honestly, it's kind of anticlimactic in a sense. Because everything today is just very technical. And then, tomorrow we bounce right into training on a couple of systems that they haven't used before much, but that they'll pick up on really quickly. And then Friday morning is our, coffee and corporate. So there are going to be corporate team members here on site in case residents have questions or concerns or, want to, go ahead and give us some opinions about ways to better the community. So lots lined up. Just in these first couple weeks.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to turn you back over and let you get back to it. We'll shoot over a message here very shortly once we've got an official confirmation. But please welcome the whole team. Tell them we were obviously very excited to have them part of the Gray residential team. And this is going to be just a great next phase for flats at Stones Crossing. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one. Bye. All right. Well, as we are closing, the last thing we're going to do is probably ring the gong out here, tell everybody congratulations, have a celebratory drink. But the hard part on these closings, personally, is that while I do think it's worth celebrating because there's so much effort that goes into putting these properties under contract, doing the due diligence, building the business plan, raising the money, getting the loan in place, closing. I think that's worth celebrating, but it's really not the objective. We're just getting started on the actual task at hand, which is executing the business plan they've been working so hard to put in place. And that's what we do every single day. That's why we're excited. But it's the opportunity to begin that journey, which is right in front of us, which is really awesome. So I'm going to make sure that Jay gets at least a glass of whiskey before he leaves responsibly, because he deserves it. The whole team here at Great Capital deserves it. So we've got a closing video you can check out on greatcapitalllc.com. But from starting with the seller and CRG, great development team to work with. Done them for a long time. Just pleasure to finally do a deal with them. To our legal team, Aaron, Tyler, couldn't do this without you guys. Really appreciate it. To the folks over at Greystone, Rich, Garvin, incredible team members. You guys help to facilitate this whole process, navigating some choppy waters as much as we can get on. Freddie and Fannie, which I think they should be privatized, by the way, guys. But anyway, you guys are great helping us navigate through that whole process. The great residential team from Katrina, Joe, Tiffany, Hillary, Nikki, Brittany, Bronte, Dustin, Trayon, the list goes on and on. You guys are incredible. You guys get it done. To Blake, Griffin, you guys raised over $25 million. Because we had some people, we had a deal fall through, so we had to raise $2 more million, and then obviously the loan proceeds changed. We ended up having to raise around $27.5 million for the $25 million net. So obviously we only closed on $25 million, but we actually had to raise about $27 million in not the easiest environment to raise capital. And this is not one investor that wrote the big check. And we had some multi-million-dollar investors. Our average investment on this deal, I think, is around $600,000. Minimum investment was $100,000. Some friends and family that came in for a little bit less. An incredible amount of work. A lot of conversations. A lot of great conversations. We've got about 70 investors on this deal, entities and individuals. About 60% of those are new investors from an equity standpoint, weighted on equity, because we have a couple larger new investors, and then 40% are existing investors, which is awesome. I think if it was done nominally, not like by not a weighted amount, I think it would be closer to 50-50, but some of these newer investors wrote some larger checks. So it was about 60-40. The real work begins. Who else do I think? Obviously, Tuvok, Will's producing the Great Report. We got Prav, marketing, whole accounting team, Leslie, Kyle, Joe, Andrew, chief operating officer, my wife and partner, Alex, who makes all of this possible. Just so much and more. Chad, asset management. Addison Lubert, of course, the analyst who first found flats, underwrote it, said, hey, I think this is something that we should take a look at and spend a little bit more time on. Thank you so much. And everyone who's been a part of the Great Capital team, whether you're on the team now or you've been on the team, we really appreciate you and all the effort. All right. Well, I'm going to sign off. We're going to make sure this deal is closed, ring the gong, have a drink. Thank you for watching this special episode of The Great Report. I know it's a little bit different. We got through some reports, and then we did a little bit of a live deal closing ceremony. Why not? Thanks again. Make sure you're subscribed to Great Capital YouTube channel. Make sure you're also set up for our newsletter. It's the best newsletter in the multifamily space, the Great Report newsletter, greatcapitalllc.com/newsletter. We get all the latest reports. Okay, we'll catch you on the next episode.